Good morning and thank you for watching this video. This is the review of the upcoming 9th round of the league fixtures at the Alternate Reality Football League. The results for the 8th round of the league games can be viewed on my website at altrealfootballleague.com or on my other videos uploaded to YouTube yesterday. So let's take a look at the Premier League fixtures firstly. Altrincham versus York, Darlington versus Shrewsbury, it will be Gainsborough versus Sheffield United, Leeds against Ipswich, Liverpool versus Huddersfield, Middlesbrough against Millwall, Rotherham against Sunderland, Spurs against Burton Albion, Welling against Nuneaton, and Wolves against Yeovil. So picking some out there, Altrincham against York is a 6-pointer. Both are on relatively poor form. Altrincham on just a single point from the last 6 games. York have picked up just 5. Altrincham, of course, bottom of the table. Leeds against Ipswich. Now that's 8th against 5th. There's little difference in terms of form either. Both Leeds have picked up 9 points from the last 6 games. Ipswich have picked up 12, so on pretty good form. And then lastly, Welling against Nuneaton. This is an intriguing one with Welling in 15th and Nuneaton in 12th. And both have picked up 7 points from their last 6 games, so it's difficult to tell in that particular one. League leaders Liverpool defend their unbeaten record as they take on Huddersfield, and Sunderland, of course, defend their unbeaten record as they travel to Rotherham. In the EFL Championship, it will be Wimbledon against FC United, Crewe against FC Halifax, Dartford against Newport, Exeter versus Luton, Gateshead against Wickham, Maidstone take on Hull, be Manchester United against Fulham, Morecambe against Manchester City, Peterborough versus Watford, Southport versus Gosport, Sutton against Port Vale, and Tamworth to take on Maidenhead. There's a few fixtures to pick out here. Exeter against Luton is a big 6-pointer down the bottom. It's 21st placed Exeter against 23rd in the table Luton. Luton have not won any in their last 4. Exeter, very up and down form. They've won 2 and lost 3 in their past 5 games. Now, Maidstone against Hull. That's another one that could be quite intriguing. That's 5th in the table against 2nd. Hull are the main contenders to Manchester United at the top of the table at the moment. And speaking of United, they are in what looks like the big tie at home to Fulham. Both are the only unbeaten clubs remaining in this division. So can something give at Old Trafford? Moving on to League One. Bishop Stortford take on Queen's Park Rangers. It will be Blackburn against Barrow, Brentford versus Dagenham, Bristol Rovers against Villa, Chelsea against Brighton, Coventry against Forest, Mansfield versus Ebbsfleet, Portsmouth against Telford, Sheffield Wednesday to take on North Ferriby, Southend against Stalybridge, Stoke to take on Chesterfield, and it will be West Ham up against Lincoln. Now, there's quite a few ties here that are interesting. Brentford against Dagenham is a London derby. Coventry against Forest is 2 clubs that are right up there. Coventry in 4th against 2nd in the table Forest, who were knocked off the top last week. Now, of course, Forest, they drew last time out. They've only picked up 1 point from the last 2 games. Both have only lost 1 time each this season. Mansfield against Ebbsfleet is another 6-pointer. It's bottom of the table Mansfield, who are still winless, against 20th in the table Ebbsfleet. So it's a real opportunity for the Stags. West Ham against Lincoln should be another interesting one as well. West Ham 6th in the table and are unbeaten. One of only 2 unbeaten clubs. On paper, you'd say they probably got too much, but Lincoln in 19th, you never really quite know what you're going to get with them. And lastly, Sheffield Wednesday against North Ferriby, where we have to mention the unbeaten league leaders. Wednesday took over at the top last week. Again, on paper, you would say that they should have enough against 15th in the table North Ferriby. To League 2, it's Aldershot against Poole, Curzon Ashton against Preston, Doncaster against Swindon, East Thurrock to take on Walsall, Gillingham versus Burnley, it's Hartlepool against Bournemouth, MK Dons versus Rochdale, St Albans against Charlton, Stockport versus Salford, Wealdstone to take on Truro, Weston-super-Mare against Alfreton, and Wigan will take on Stevenage. Now there's one local derby there, which is Stockport against Salford in the Greater Manchester battle. The big tie surely has got to be Aldershot against Poole. You can see right at the top. Poole are unbeaten, one of only 2 unbeaten clubs, along with their Dorset rivals Bournemouth, who top the table. But Aldershot, currently sitting in 2nd place in the table, well, they are flying in terms of form as well, just behind Bournemouth. In fact, they're joint top of the form chart along with the Cherries. Speaking of the Cherries, well, they travel to Hartlepool. That's a battle of 16th against 1st. As we say, Bournemouth also defending their unbeaten record. And then we've also got Weston-super-Mare against Alfreton. This is another basement bargain battle, as we see the winless Weston-super-Mare up against Alfreton, who sit in 21st. In the National League Premier Division, it will be Brackley against Boston, Cardiff versus Newcastle, Chester against Harrogate, Derby to take on Macclesfield, Eastleigh against Braintree, Fleetwood versus Tranmere, Margate against West Brom, Northampton to take on Crystal Palace, Oxford against Wrexham, Reading against Eastbourne, Swansea to take on Bradford, and Worcester will take on Oxford. Now, in terms of these ties, there's 3 that I've picked out. Cardiff against Newcastle should be a real standout tie. That's the unbeaten league leaders Cardiff against 4th in the table Newcastle. Eastleigh against Braintree is yet another one that features 2 struggling sides. Eastleigh bottom of the table and of course still winless against Braintree in 19th. And lastly, Swansea against Bradford. Well, they're not particularly close in the table, but we have to mention Swansea as they went joint top with their Welsh rivals Cardiff last week. And they, of course, are still also unbeaten. Bradford currently sit in mid-table in 12th, so it won't be easy for Swansea, but you'd fancy them to get the 3 points. And certainly got the easier of the 2 ties for the Welsh sides. In the National League Championship, Arsenal will host Bath. Then it'll be Bradford Park Avenue against Accrington, Carlisle versus Hungerford, Forest Green versus Kidderminster, Gloucester against Dover, Scunthorpe to take on Grimsby, Solihull Moors against Cambridge United, Southampton versus Norwich. It will be Torquay against Bristol City, Whitehawk to take on Barnet, and then it will be Woking against Bromley. Now, 4 ties I'll pick out here. Arsenal against Bath. Well, we have to mention the unbeaten league leaders. They are absolutely storming at the top. Bath sitting 10th. So again, on paper, you'd say Arsenal will be too strong, but how can Bath get on at the Emirates? Forest Green against Kidderminster. This is 2 clubs right at the opposite end of the spectrum. Forest Green, bottom, and winless, of course, against Kidderminster, who, of course, lost their first 2, and they were bottom after the first 2 rounds. They have since gone on a 6-match unbeaten streak, winning 5 and drawing 1, and they are currently sitting in 5th in the table. They're on great form at the minute, Kidderminster. Scunthorpe against Grimsby. Well, of course, this is a heated Lincolnshire derby, and that's actually 14th against 15th, so 2 local rivals very close together in the table. And then lastly, Southampton against Norwich. The Saints are the closest challengers to league leaders Arsenal at the minute, but 6th in the table Norwich will prove to be a real competitor in terms of the Saints trying to keep pace with Arsenal. And lastly, National League 1. You can see Fylde versus Birmingham, Boreham Wood against Barnsley, Bury versus Leicester, Chelmsford to take on Blackpool, Cheltenham against Crawley, Colchester versus Bolton, Guiseley against Notts County, Hampton and Richmond against Everton, Hemel Hempstead versus Chorley, Oldham against Concord, and lastly Plymouth against Leyton Orient. And there are 5 matches I've picked out here. Fylde against Birmingham, Fylde bottom of the table and still winless. They have to start picking up wins against 9th place Birmingham, so they're just on the fringes of the playoff positions. Colchester against Bolton, Colchester sitting 16th against another unbeaten side still going in 2nd place, Bolton Wanderers. Hampton and Richmond against Everton. This is a potentially interesting one. Hampton sitting 7th, so they're 1 place outside the playoffs against yet another unbeaten side, 3rd placed Everton. Oldham against Concord Rangers. Well, if we're mentioning unbeaten sides, we have to mention the red-hot league leaders, Oldham. They, along with Sunderland, have the best form in the entire country over the past 6 games. 6 consecutive wins for the Latics. They are absolutely flying, and on paper should be too strong for 17th place Concord Rangers. And lastly, we have to mention Plymouth against Leyton Orient. Again, 2 sides who are opposite ends of the spectrum. Plymouth, well, they are right in the relegation zone, also winless along with Fylde, and they take on Leyton Orient in 6th place, so currently sitting in the playoff position. So those are the fixtures for round 9. Round 9 will be updated as soon as possible and uploaded onto the website, so please either keep checking the site or keep checking my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook or YouTube accounts for more updates. Thanks once again for watching.